just been chatting with our guest today, and I'm going to let Aaron explain what he has going on because he's built an amazing business. And I'll give you the spoiler alert is that here's a business that'll do close to 300 million, maybe more than 300 million this year. And a guy that has built an amazing business, Aaron, Rian, out of Portland, Seattle, Tacoma. I think he's going global. He's got an office opening in Spain later this month, I think. No, I'm just kidding. Aaron, why don't you tee up the conversation with kind of a brief intro of when you got started in real estate, what it looked like. Actually, I forgot to ask you the question, the guiding post question.
What's up?
Our industry needs more of. Are you prepared to share the good, bad, ugly about your business growth journey?
Sure. If you're willing to listen to all the ugly, man, I'll share it all with you.
Yeah, we are, because I think that's where the gems are, to avoid the mistakes of others that have gone ahead of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, awesome. So give us like a couple minutes on your background, how you got into real estate, how it all started.
Yeah. So out of college, I started doing some development, started doing some flips and new builds, that kind of stuff. I got my license because I was selling a lot of my own product. Then all of a sudden, went through the downward turn in the economy and nobody would lend me any more money to continue doing projects and continue doing, flips and new builds and all that good stuff. So I did the next best thing, which was focus on being a realtor full time, and got into that. My first year, I think I sold like 36 houses by myself. That was my first full year of doing it, man. It was like 2008, and just grinded it out. I mean, back then it was a lot different than it is today. Just grinded it out. Open houses, 4 open houses a weekend, picking up buyers, driving buyers all over the city, negotiating deals till 9, 10 o'clock at night back in those days. And then, I think that first year I only listed like 1 house, maybe 2 houses, just people I picked up at open houses that also needed to sell something. So that's, honestly, I don't have like a huge fancy story about how I got started. That was just it. I just grinded it out in 2008 and just tried to sell as many homes as I could during that year.
Awesome. And what does the personal life look like? Wife, kids, any of that stuff?
No wife, no kids during that time. Just work. I was married to my work.
Awesome. How about now? Any wife, kids?
No, girlfriend. No wife, no kids.
All right, good. I like it.
Yeah.
So, let's go back to, so this was, you were individual agent, hustling, working your butt off. Market was declining. So this was like end of 2008 is when everything hit the fan.
Yeah.
So that's your first full year in real estate, which was my first full year.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have sort of a similar journey back then. And what did 2008, 9, 10 look like? Like work schedule, what were you focused on every day? Agents fail to get out of survival. Like it's the biggest thing that is wrong with our industry.
Yeah.
How many agents do you know selling more than that aren't on a team that are selling more than 2 homes a month? It's rare. So deconstruct that 2008, 9, 10. When was the first admin hire, the first buyer agent hire? What were your activities? How'd you structure your day? All of that.
Yeah. So my first year, there wasn't much structure to my day. It was just come to work and just run around and do a whole bunch of stuff. It was try to line up open houses for the weekend, try to market those open houses. My first year was just all about learning. So one of my really good friends was the #1 agent in that Century 21 office that I was at. And I just tried to learn as much as I could from him. I followed him around. I'd take him to lunch every day. Anytime he'd go to lunch with me, I took him to lunch. And I just sat there and picked his brain. I tried to learn as much as humanly possible from him. And weekends, 4 open houses a weekend, like I was mentioning earlier. 11:30 to 1:30, then 2 to 4. Then I would take buyers that I picked up off of those opens out. Anybody who would let me drive them around, I'd start driving them around those evenings on the weekends, trying to show them properties. During the week, it was just following up with the leads that I picked up on the weekend, right? You know how it was in '08. That was before all the fancy pay-per-click systems and, SEO and all those internet leads and all that stuff, right? So it was just getting out there meeting people. '09, 2010, those were probably the toughest years in real estate. But, you can probably relate to me on this one, Lars. We didn't know any better. We just thought that's how it was. I really thought that that's just what it was like to be a realtor. So it was interesting because during those years, I made the transition over to Keller Williams. And that's when I got introduced to prospecting, joined coaching programs, and just kind of learned what it took to get listings. Because the first year was just all buyers. I was just doing all buyers and grinding all that stuff out myself. And then the 2009, 2010 years was when I learned how to prospect, get listings, list properties, and start to build the business.
So let's talk a little bit about leverage. When did you kind of really start to understand the concept of leverage? And, obviously you're not going to sell personally $300 million in real estate this year.
Yeah.
When did the concept of leverage start to kick in, and how did you act on that?
Yeah. So my first year, I had an assistant by the end of the year. I was terrible with paperwork. I'll be honest with you. That's why I hired an assistant. It wasn't because I was too busy or anything like that. I probably still could have fit doing all my paperwork in during the week, but I was just awful at it. And my files were constantly getting flagged and they were sending them back to me. I was a compliance nightmare, Lars. I was probably the worst agent in the office at paperwork. So hired an assistant. She did all my paperwork for me. She worked for me like 4 hours a day, right? Part-time assistant gal. So she was just doing all my paperwork and keeping my stuff in line. So I'd stop getting in trouble with the office. Then 2009, because I was trying to focus more on getting listings and going on appointments and prospecting, I actually hired a buyer's agent. He still works here to this day, actually. So had my first buyer's agent. My assistant still worked with me, and that that was my beginning of my leverage, right? So I leveraged out my open houses. I leveraged out, tasks that I just didn't have time to do. And, the word leverage, just because it's been overused in the industry, not my favorite word, Lars. I don't love the word because it wasn't like I was just trying to leverage out all my work. I was still out there grinding 10, 12, 13, more like 14 hours a day, grinding it out. I used my staff and my people just as a tool to be able to sell more houses. I looked at it that way. I just looked at, look, I need you to sell 2-3 houses a month so I can sell 6, 7, 8, and we can ultimately hit our annual goal. And so, I just looked at everybody as a tool as to how can I achieve my ultimate goal, which was just, sell more houses than I possibly could do myself.
Right. And so when you're heavy in production, so 2009, 10, you're still, most of the production is you in those years?
Yeah, for sure.
And what did it look like, kind of building out the team so all the production didn't rest on your shoulders? So our journeys are eerily similar, right? I hired my first buyer agent in 2009. He was with me for 7 years. My first admin was 2008, and I threw everything after I got it under contract. I just threw at her, and I could care less if it closed. Like, really, yeah. I was just like, do your best. You're licensed, figure it out. So it wasn't this like, premeditated system like we have now. It was just running and gunning. And I took most Sundays off. I didn't go the open house route, which I want to hear more about that. I think people can really learn from that. You don't even need your own listings to hold open houses. But tell me about in the thick of it, how many buyer agents did you get, or how many agents did you hire before you took your pedal off of the production?
Yeah. So I started replacing myself once we got up to like 130, 140 deals a month. That was kind of when I started to ease up and
a month or a year?
A year.
Okay.
Did I say a month?
Yeah.
No, a year.
That's
Sorry.
awesome.
Yeah, you can tell how the change, the change of thinking has taken place, right? I'm thinking a month as to where I used to do that stuff in a year. So yeah, so when I got to like 120, 130 a year, that was kind of when I started to look at replacing myself. But I was smart in the way that I did it, in the fact that what I did was I actually hired other agents in other markets to take listings, so that if they failed or they couldn't do it, or they couldn't do it at the rate that I needed them to do, I still had my production coming in. And that was actually probably one of the best things that I did, was I wanted to prove out my system and my training and my mentorship. I mean, everything, right? With somebody who was in a neighboring market before I just gave up my production.
Awesome. Go back to the open houses. What unique, what did you do that was unique with open houses to build your business? It sounds like that was a main pillar to build your business.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't think I did a lot of stuff that was unique. I was just consistent and persistent with them. So I went to the top agents in my office and I said, hey, look, I'm your free labor for the next 12 months or whatever, right? I said, I will hold your open houses. You will not have to do another open house for the next year. Just let me do them. You email me, let me know when you want an open, and I'm your guy. So I went to like the top 4 or 5 agents in my office, and that's what I did. And I held their open houses. And my whole goal was not to sell them that house. It was just to sell them a house. That was my whole mentality behind the open house model. So what I would do is I just focused on every single person, just getting them to sign in on a sheet, right? And you remember back in those days, open houses, there were some open houses, you sit there for 2 hours, you'd get nobody. Then there were some open houses when you would get, 5, 6 people, and that was a good open house. So my whole goal was get everybody sign in on my little sign-in book. I would get an email address and a phone number. That was key for me. And I could get, probably 85% of the people who walked in the door to give me an email address and a phone number. And then I spent all week just grinding on them. I'd call them every day, twice a day, just to find out when I could, when I could send them properties, or when they could get out and I could show them houses. And I would just stay on top of them. I was just that guy who just called and called and called and called and emailed and emailed and emailed and emailed, because I had nothing better to do. So that was just my whole strategy. And, it led to me selling just under 40 houses that first year.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love I just think as a society, there's no persistence and consistency in anything. Everyone gets into real estate. The reason we have like 82% don't renew their license by the end of the year too, is that nobody's willing to do it. Like you were willing to do, and I signed up with Boomtown in 2008. So I was there like in their top 10, clients. Wow. So, and I was just super persistent and consistent with that. And we still our agents aren't as persistent and consistent as I was. I mean, I was getting out of bed at 8:59. I had 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. I was committed to lead response. And if it was 8:59 and I was in bed, I was getting out of bed and I was responding to that lead.
Sure.
Because it was a $6,000 commission check in my mind. Yeah. Now our agents are like, well, that's 1 out of 100 are going to close for me. They don't respond like it's an actual commission check. So Portland is a bigger operation, right?
Yep.
And so that was, how long did you stay with take me through the growth of Portland? So 2008, 9, 10, at the end of 2010, how many agents did you have around you?
For the volume that we do, I don't have as many agents as people would think. We still don't have, I'm not a Keller Williams office where I have 200 agents, right? So I've always kept it smaller, but the average productivity per agent is really, really high. So, back then, I think that we were doing 100 deals with like 4 agents, 150 deals with 4 or 5 agents. So it wasn't a huge team, a couple buyers agents, a couple listing agents, and then myself just going out and just selling houses. So we didn't have a huge team. It was just, I think it was by the end of 2010, I think I had maybe 5, 6 agents, and I had a listing coordinator and a transaction coordinator, and that was it.
Okay. What's that next phase of growth look like? The next 2 or 3 years, what does it look like for you, your production, your skill set? Did you know how to go out and find people and recruit them and train them? Like
Yeah.
take us through that next, what'd you do really good? What'd you mess up in that next phase of growth?
Yeah. So I've always been an investor. I've invested in a lot of businesses. I've started businesses and sold them. So, I've had a background in managing and running businesses prior to getting into brokerage full time. So I've always hired and trained and motivated and ran staffs before. So that part wasn't new to me. The biggest, I guess the biggest challenge that I had when it came to building the team was just I guess that it was just the competition level for agents in our particular market. That probably was the shocker for me was, wow, there's a new licensee coming, getting out of real estate school, and there's 7 companies trying to recruit this person. That part I wasn't used to. So, for me, from a staffing perspective, that probably was the bigger challenge. But, where we started to really grow the team was right around 2011, 2012. We opened in a couple markets in my home state, which is Portland. Technically, my market is a border state or a border market. So right across the river, like 15 minutes from my office, 20 minutes from my office is Vancouver, Washington. So we ended up actually getting our licensing in Washington and placing an agent up there that would cover that territory for us. So 2000, I want to say 2011, 12, 13, right around in there is where we started to really expand out. So, we ended up opening offices like in Salem, Oregon, Bend, Medford, the Oregon coast, Vancouver, Washington during that time. And, we'd place an agent in each market, and we would just, we'd prospect for them. We'd find, business for them, and we would make them part of our team just in a remote market. The biggest challenge, Lars, in our business early on was how to keep the remote agent, right? So the remote agent who doesn't see an Aaron or a Lars every day, how to keep them engaged and feeling like they're part of the team when they have a local competing real estate office right next to them or down the street from their house. How do I keep them engaged and on my team and on my page, and not have them want to go to a Keller Williams or a Remax or Century 21 or whatever the case is? That was the biggest challenge.
And was that just surrounding them with the services to help them be more successful with you than without you?
It was partially that, but a lot of it, Lars, is just the relationship that you have with the agent. I found out that a lot of it was more just spending more time with them, via video conference, telephone, whatever it is, just being more engaged with them personally. So, we went through setting up our scheduling for the week. So if you look at a snapshot of our weeks now, a lot of it is around engaging the agents who are in remote markets where they don't get to see me or our director of sales every single day. So, we have sales meetings, we have sales training calls, we have masterminds once a week. We do a lot of things to keep our remote people engaged so they're constantly involved with activity with myself, our senior managers, or, top producers.
Awesome. And something that's not shared a lot in our industry are, some of the failures that you'll go through to grow a business or real estate team. Can you think of a couple failures, things that you wish you could have done differently or maybe known something ahead of time, things that you didn't do that well as you grew the business?
I'll tell you, early on, it was engaging the remote agent. That was one of the things that I was not very good at, and I lost some pretty good talent because of that. So if I could go back and do it again, of course, I would have the systems and everything that I have in place to engage them and keep them moving and keep them motivated that I have today. That honestly, Lars, was probably the biggest stumbling block that I had building the business, was not having the right systems and the right tools in place to keep those remote agents engaged so that we could build out those territories.
And what you mentioned, average agent productivity, and we run a similar model. We have about 1 million GCI flowing through our agents. We have a single location, but it's a highly leveraged model.
Yeah.
They get a lot of support and they do a small part of the job. What does your average productivity look like per agent? You'll do over 300 million this year in all the locations.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how many agents are feeding into that?
We have about 30.
Okay. So you're at 10 million average per agent. You've probably got some 25, 30 million guys in there, and newer agents are 3 to 5 million.
I got some guys who are doing 20, in good months doing 21 homes a month, and then I got some guys who are just barely, we call it qualifying at 3 homes or $1 million. So
Yes.
we have a minimum standard with our agents where they need to sell, X amount every month or they just can't be on the team.
Yeah. Talk about how do you mentioned training new agents. What does your training look like for a new agent on your team? Let's say are you looking for, and who you're looking for? Are you looking for agents with experience, without real estate experience? And how do you get them up and running as quickly as possible?
Yeah. So Lars, what we found, and I think you probably have too, coming from our backgrounds, together in circles we ran with, was finding the experienced agents. When you do that, we found you're inheriting a lot of bad habits. Especially you get somebody who's a veteran of 20 years, you're just inheriting a lot of bad habits. And we do things a lot differently here than, the independent agent, Joe Schmuckatelli, who's out there trying to run his own business, right? So we found our most successful people come from outside of the industry. And then we train them the right way, or what we consider to be the right way of selling real estate. So when we bring them in, remember, we're training them from ground zero. So we're training them with scripts, dialogues, systems, lead follow-up, everything. So they go through about a week to 10 days of training. It's a hybrid classroom and in the field training where we're getting them up to speed as quickly as possible. We're teaching them everything from the ground up. So, we work under the assumption when they come in that they know nothing about a house. So we train them with the entire process from the ground up. Just basically, everything they need to know. We give them our buyer's presentations, our listing scripts. We give them everything. Then from there, once we get them out of that initial training, then it's just continual training. They participate in 2 continual trainings per week, whether that's in the form of a sales training call, sales meeting, or a mastermind moving forward.
Okay. Tell me about the current, maybe, I don't know if you can answer it across your different locations, but in the main location, what are some of your most profitable lead sources?
The most profitable thing is picking up the phone. That's our most profitable lead source is just calling. Whether it's doing for sale by owners, expireds, canceled, that's by far the number one most profitable thing that I do. I'm old school. I come from, the old school prospecting system. So that's the most profitable thing that we have in our business, just picking up the phone and making the cold calls.
So expired FSBOs, you guys are doing Circle as well?
Yep.
And what are some of the metrics that you track in expired FSBOs and Circle? Like, a newer agent, expects these many contacts to nurture. Like, give folks, some barometer of how you track that.
Yeah. So we set it. You make X amount of calls, you're going to get X amount of contacts. X amount of contacts are going to result in X amount of appointments, right? You go on X amount of appointments, that's going to relate to X amount of listings. X amount of listings is going to result in X amount of sales every single month, like clockwork, right? The only variable is, how many hours are you going to put into this thing? How many hours are you going to put into working? And we try to eliminate that variable and have required set times that our people have to spend just prospecting and our inside sales departments.
Yep. So inside sales, obviously you time block them pretty well. How about outside sales? Are you structured with outside sales?
So outside sales guys are so busy with the leads that we're providing through inside sales that they're not spending any. Back in the day we used to, but now they're so busy out on appointments that they have no time to even come in and prospect anymore.
Yep. All right. What lead sources have you tried but failed miserably at?
Oh, you name them, we've done them. Boomtown, Commissions Inc. I mean, all of them, right? So the pay-per-click systems, they were okay. They were, they were okay systems for us. The percentage of profitability in those systems just weren't there for us. So, we started to get away from those a little bit. So like the Boomtowns, the Commissioning, the Tiger Leads, all that stuff. For us, in our marketplace, it just wasn't the most profitable thing for us.
Okay. What's something that you're doing really well in the business right now?
If I had to name one thing, it's prospecting. I would probably say that we're in the top 3 to 5 teams in the nation, probably, who are seeing results with just straight cold calling and prospecting.
And what are the expectations you have for a mid-level inside salesperson? What's the daily expectations of sets or Mets?
Okay, so I'll break it down pretty simply because I like to just keep it pretty simple. So I go on a per appointment basis. I mean, we have all different kinds of metrics. I mean, I have reports and everything else that show, per appointment or per hour worked ratios of appointments, all that stuff. But really, when it comes down to it, an average ISA should be getting our team 3 pre-confirmed appointments a day.
And how many of your ISAs are doing that?
At least that, 80%, 85%.
So
we have a good solid core team in there now, though. I mean, we have a great manager. We have a really good really good core group of inside sales agents right now.
And are they our typical 8-hour workday?
Yeah, 9 hours. I mean, they stay till the job is done, and every one of our agents has an opportunity for the next day. So, we shoot for 8 hours, but some days they're working 9-10 hours a day.
Yeah, and so I think the point that I want to make on that is if you're in Aaron's market and competing, good luck. If you're in real estate and wondering what the future of real estate holds, it's this, right? It's doing new business development at such a high level that you got to compete at that level, or you need to join a team that's doing that.
That's it.
That's 3 to 5 years from now. That's what the industry, I mean, we're running a very similar model. We have 9 inside sales right now. We're blessed in our market. It's big enough where we can do our $1 billion in a single year in our market.
That's awesome.
So I don't think we really need to deal with expansion just because of the way that we're set up. But it's exactly that. We do the 2-10-40. If you're not setting 2 qualified appointments a day, 10 a week, 40 a month, you are not doing your job, and you're not going to be successful.
Yeah. Well, so, I think too, Lars, I mean, going back to, kind of what you were talking about there is, in our industry, one of the biggest challenges is that, because of some of the structures of some of the other, real estate companies that are out there, they put people in positions. Just because they were good at selling real estate means you're not good at running a business. Just because you are a good listing agent doesn't mean that you're going to be a great business owner. So, identify that early. If you can't run a business, you can't run a sales organization, join a team, continue being a great salesperson.
Yeah. One of the things I struggled with in the heavy build years in the business was enjoying the ride. So really enjoying the process of living a life. Is there anything, do you struggle in that area, or have you figured out some practices that you put in place to make sure you are enjoying the ride? Can we learn anything about your journey with respect to just simply enjoying the ride?
Sure. And Lars, I'll be honest. I mean, like I have, this whole conversation, it's that I'm still not good at that today, to be honest with you. I was just talking to our director of sales the other day, and, he was mentioning it to me too, that, I don't take enough time. I never have. I think with the time that you and I started in the business, we're always scared that it's going to go back to that. So it's, my mentality is always get while the getting's good. and just grind and go as hard as you possibly can right now. And, you know, even I need to spend more time enjoying it. You know, I'd like to take more vacations, but, you know, and I'd like to take more time away from the office and take more time to enjoy the fruits of our labor. But that's one of the things that honestly, Lars, you know, I have to work on, and I have to, you know, do a better job of, you know, managing more personal time for myself.
Yeah, that's fair. I appreciate the honesty. I'm going to throw just kind of like rapid fire questions at you.
Please.
Just give me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Let's do it.
What keeps you up at night with respect to the business?
The stress of ensuring that I create opportunities for the people who have been here with me since the beginning, because loyalty to them is what drives me and keeps me moving every single day. And that's one of the biggest, you know, the biggest things that I obsess with, is trying to make sure that my people, especially the ones who have been here since the early years and since the beginning, have all the opportunity in the world.
Awesome. What were you most afraid of when building a real estate team?
The thing I was most afraid of, I mean, failure, you know, especially in the early years, not knowing if I was going to be able to do it at a level that I found to be acceptable, and to do it the way that I wanted to do it, because nobody before me had ever, you know, had done it. You know, you remember back in those days, there weren't a ton of giant teams like ours. There weren't a ton of, you know, highly productive teams doing, you know, $300 million. You know, there were some individual agents doing 50, 60, $80 million, but nobody quite got to that level. So that was probably the biggest fear that I had.
Yeah. Awesome. What is the best advice you've ever received about business?
Best advice that I ever received about business was, you know, just be honest. You know, be honest with everybody. Be straightforward with everybody. You know, just be honest with your employees. Be honest with your clients. Be honest with your vendors. Just be upfront and be honest with everybody. Just be transparent. Let them know, look, I can do this. I can't do this. People will respect you more for telling them you can't do something than trying to pull the wool over their eyes and just, you know, BS your way through things. So just full transparency has always been the right way to go.
Yeah, that's gold. The one I said this recently to my coaching leadership team.
Yeah.
I'm basically asking them for grace on a mistake that I made. I'm like, how many times have you guys think that I built a real estate coaching company?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like, you know, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
You know? And I think a lot of people get caught up on how to manage people. And if you manage from the heart and you just literally have open conversations about where could I do better? Like, you know, where have I done well? Where do you feel, you know, and don't overthink it. I think every business in America would be better off if people just slow down and connected with another human being.
Yeah.
You know, so that's really, really cool. How about any personal daily or weekly habits that you believe contribute to your success?
You know, I get up early every single day, Lars. I get up between, you know, 4:15 and 5 o'clock, hit the gym, do an hour-long Orange Theory session, and then I'm ready to go for the day. I'll tell you what, probably the best habit I have is getting up early and just getting myself kick-started, so that by the time my competition even rolls out of bed, I'm ready for lunch.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably been the biggest thing, and just keeping a schedule. So if it's not, you've heard this before, if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. Run at least 3/4 of your day that way, you know, and then keep the other fourth of the day for things that might just come up or things you got to deal with. But the first, you know, keep a schedule, stay true to it, and don't try to do things that make it unmanageable for a long period of time. Right? If you give yourself a little bit of flexibility, you know, like the 3/4 of the day, stick to your schedule, and then the last quarter, you know, leave some time in there for other variables, you'll stick with it a lot longer because it's more manageable.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I mean, just asking yourself the question, you know, what do you want? Okay. So I want this. And then where is it in your calendar?
Yeah.
You know, cause none of this is hard.
Yeah.
You know, and you've achieved what most will never achieve, and you've done it just by putting it in your calendar and getting after it early and doing things that other people were not willing to do.
Yeah.
You know,
and a lot of it's just sticking with it too, right? It's just persistence, and consistent, being consistent.
Yeah.
It's nothing special. That's just all it is.
Yeah. I talked to a guy that, Dan Sullivan, strategic coach. I was at his house and I asked him, I'm like, so tell me about the growth, right? Tell me, I want to know, how he's got a $30 million business. And he's like, nobody stuck with it for 28 years. That was literally his answer, pure humility. Like there's nothing special. I responded to the needs I saw in entrepreneurs. They all have similar afflictions. And I was able to, stick with it and just commit to serving this segment of the population. And yeah, that whole consistency, that's a big takeaway for me. Consistency, consistent and persistent. That's really, really good. How about any kind of, people love just like apps or internet resources that you are in love with that you want to share with us?
Yeah. So it's funny. I get asked that a lot. Everybody thinks that it's like this magical CRM that I have that's causing me to sell, 730 homes a year. And there's not, I'm the most basic guy out there, but I'm going to tell you this. I don't use a ton of apps. I use my iPhone for like my email and I think that probably the most used app I have on my phone is my Nike sneakers app. I don't really use a bunch of fancy real estate apps, man. It's when it comes to my business and what I do, I'm super basic. I have a very basic business plan, a basic, footprint as far as, what we're going to come in and do every single day. There's not a lot of fancy, apps and technology and all that good stuff. So, I wish I could give you a better answer on that one and tell you that I had some kind of awesome silver bullet or magic bullet for you, but I don't. There's nothing for you.
Awesome. What about one book you'd recommend for our listeners? Maybe someone who's kind of earlier on in their journey.
Yeah. Early on in the journey, read the Gary Keller books. I'm not at KW anymore. I've left them years and years and years ago, but I will tell you this. Gary Keller, one of the smartest real estate guys who are out there. His red books, they're all pretty good. They have good information. You're not going to use it all. You're not going to use it all, but you'll get good bits and pieces out of there that'll help you with the direction of your business. So if you're new out there, you're thinking that you just want something that's, that you want to get some tips and tricks from, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. What should you have shared with us that you haven't?
What should I? Well, I'll tell you this. I do have something. I do have a recommendation for the people who are out there. And I've just seen this, in the industry in general. It's, especially in our business, for some reason, there tends to be a lot of ego and a lot of people who, are pretty full of themselves. Number one tip that I have for people is if you can keep that in check, if you can keep that out of your business, out of your daily life, and just realize that you're just another guy out there selling real estate or managing people who are selling real estate, and it's not really that big of a deal, and you're just doing the best that you can, and just keep the ego and the craziness out of your life and out of your business, you'll do so much better. You'll do so much better. I've seen very talented people with huge egos who can't grow a business past 20 million bucks because their ego is their ceiling. Nobody wants to be around them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Aaron, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Well, there's a number. The list is long, and I don't think we have enough time for all of it because I did a lot of things wrong and I did some things right. But, the thing that I would start off doing is just hire the best people I possibly can, regardless of the cost. Hire the best people I possibly can. And don't hire people for the business I have today, right? Like transaction coordinators who have a cap of, say 40 deals. That's all they can process. You want to hire people for the business you want. So hire the best talent, the people with really high ceilings, not people for the business you have today, but hire the people for the business you want. That's probably the biggest change that I would have made early on. It would have saved me a lot of time, a lot of headache, and a lot of money.
As we wrap up here, a lot of people, I mentioned it earlier, are struggling in our industry. There's
Yeah.
a lot of darkness in our industry, and I think a lot of just suffering. What words of encouragement would you give, to someone that really wants to get after it, and they really want to be able to show their spouse or their family or whatever that they can make this work? What words of encouragement would you have?
Yeah. So Lars, I mean, I'll tell people this. I mean, I started and you started in the worst time, in U.S. history of real estate, right? And we're not doing anything special. I don't think that me or you have created, some kind of special tool or magic bullet or anything like that. We just work hard. We just show up every day, we work hard, and we do the best that we possibly can. So, if we can do it, the people out there certainly can do it. They just have to be, like we talked about earlier, be persistent, be consistent, show up to work every single day, and don't ask anybody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. And if you live by those things, you can be wildly successful. The best part about our industry is you don't have to have a master's degree to make 10 million bucks. Okay? You don't have to have a master's degree to even get into the business. Just, understand it's the lowest, it's one of the lowest barrier of entries, right, of any industry, but it's got one of the highest ceilings possible. Just remember that, and just work and outwork your competition every single day. That's all you got to do, and you'll end up being successful at some level.
Yeah, that's awesome, Aaron. I appreciate your time. This has been helpful. I know I pulled a bunch of information just from our conversation here, and encouragement. And so I know that your share here is going to help a lot of people. I thank you for that. Real Estate B School thanks you. And if there's anything I could ever do for you, you just let me know. And my encouragement for everyone listening is just to go out and build a business worth owning, right? Build a business worth owning. Don't be enslaved by your business, and get after it. Aaron, I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah. Thank you, Lars. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.